As we created the first Aman some 8,498 years ago, the second Aman was born 2,298 years ago. For we chose from the Hebrew Israelites the mother to be of our Messiah, and she was ordained from her birth for this purpose, and we named her Maryam. She always had food, clothing, and shelter, and was of standard within her time, while Joseph himself was a man of high demand in his day, for he had the ability to make houses with his hands, which made him highly favored by the opposite sex, as he had the mind to make houses for all of them. And so Joseph was introduced to Maryam through ordinary people, and he was not at first in awe of her, but when the Spirit of the Holy Ghost breathed through him, we asked him, "What do you think about entertaining indigenous people?" For this, to some degree, Joseph was willing, and so we asked him to build Maryam a house, and he gladly obliged us. Yet within the process of doing so, the world of the Hebrew Israelites came into turmoil, and the Egyptian king Herod had a daughter named Nefertiti, and the king began to act erratically, and in doing so issued a decree ordering the sons born of the Hebrew Israelites put to death. Still in all, Joseph and Maryam were a match made in heaven, and Joseph was not afraid to inch his feet and test the water. But when Joseph found out Maryam was already pregnant, he wondered who was the father, and so the archangel came to Joseph and explained to him that what she was carrying inside her was something special, and that he was ordained to become a great teacher and a minister in honor of all our works as Hebrew Israelites. Even so, upon the birth of Perez, we know that Yeshua was not born in a dynasty or Arab world, but instead in a major, as they had been traveling back and forth between Jerusalem and Egypt when Maryam came into labor. And we know she gave birth in a prostrate position because that is the best position to give birth in by experiencing labor pains and giving natural birth. While the three wise men, Zechariah, Jericho, and Seth, came from the east with gifts and warm welcomes for him, as he was the child of the prophecy of Moses and Abraham's descendants, while Joseph followed the instructions of the oracles upon the birth of the virgin child. And we named him Yeshua, which in Hebrew Arabic means honor the Son as the Father, while taking notice that Yeshua was born unumbilicated. Yet, in his youth, Yeshua spent his time around fishermen and boats, learning how to bait hooks and tie ropes. And in time, he learned how to become a shoreline fisherman. And he never fished for booty, but to put food on the table, and every day he learned to be more and more grateful. Yet as he got older, he spent most of his time with his cousin Apollo playing and drinking while still fishing until he had saved up enough money to buy a boat, as he first thought to start his own line as a fisherman. But instead, he chose to become a minister after having a premonition one day in Egypt, which made him fall to his knees and realize he was the temple of the Holy Ghost as the Father and Son. From this, he went home and talked with his mother, whom along with Joseph began teaching him who and what he was, as well as taking him to Egypt in honor of our history as Hebrew Israelites, where they began to teach him the true history of our faith as Israelites, as well as allowing him meetings with King Herod and Queen Nefertiti once he dismissed his decree against the males born of the Israelites, and others, where Yeshua first saw the first statues which resemble him in the form of Aman, which was a product of the oracles as the first man or original man, and in time he will become known as the one without a belly navel. Still in all, by this time, Joseph and Maryam had had more children since then. Yet from this point forward, Yeshua began to recognize himself as El Aman, Revelation 3:14, as well as become a fisherman of men, while accumulating a number of followers as well as 12 disciples, and together they began to administer the faith, heal the sick, and study amongst Yeshua in honor and worship of our Dean. And knowing this, Yeshua always acknowledged the Father as greater than he. Therefore, as Aman, he recognized that he was the son of Ra, Psalms 84:11, or El Atin. And so within our history as ancient Egyptian Hebrew Israelites, we know Yeshua to be El Atin, who said God was the Son, and that he was the Son of God. Based on our biblical records and history, we know that Yeshua was not a threat to Egypt or Queen Nefertiti, as Herod had ended his decree despite still seeing us as something unusual, as his wife and daughter were known to esteem Yeshua and were both found to be very fond of him as well, before Herod was besieged later in time for calling his own people, as Yeshua was known to be black and comely, and so we were not betrayed by none other than the Roman Etruscans at the hand of Julius Caesar, as Jerusalem had fallen under control of the Romans, which led Yeshua and his disciples into a trap, fearing that the teachings of Yeshua and the Hebrew Israelites were a threat to Julius Caesar. And for this we were arrested within the garden of Gastonian and betrayed while preparing for our return within the kingdom of heaven. Needless to say, we had ordered our disciples to stand down, and they put a struggle up anyway, and from this one of the Roman soldiers' earlobes was sliced in half. As Hercules, the stepson of Apollo, could not stand aside of the Romans, as it was the Egyptian army who had all the power. From this we were brought forth and handed over by Roman army's royal guard and placed within the prisoner execution chamber, where we found 2 others who had already been condemned before being brought forth before the governor and his wife. Here we spoke to Pilate for some time, who thought we were some kind of adultery, as his wife too was esteemed at the sight of Yeshua, and it was she who was the first one to tell him to take those shackles and chains off of him. And she found his mannerism and tone hilarious. And that's why he wanted to execute us. And so after talking with him, he then issued his decree of execution. And Yeshua told him, "Be it as it may, for I tell you, I am the Son of the Father." And those were the last words between us and the governor before a Roman soldier came over and healed Yeshua over, and his eyes began to water, as he was then escorted back to the execution quarters. For this, Yeshua's heart was known to grow cold and become bitter. Yet he was never made to wear a crown made out of thorns, and his road to Calvary was accompanied by those who would throw stones. Yet we gave them all free will. No one helped Yeshua, and he was then affixed upon a crucifix within the ground made of stone, alongside those chosen in honor and glory who would accompany him into the kingdom of our Almighty Fathers that day. And when he cried out and asked, "Father, why have you forsaken me?" we answered him in honor of his own glory and told him, "For the sake of the living, which is the spirit of Amen Ra before you today."